Welcome to the Friends and Rivals podcast.
Does your family have like a crest and that entire last name is on it?
I used Colgate, but I'm not sure.
Let's talk Devils and Islanders, let's talk Penguins and Rangers, but let's not talk about Flyers, cause they're a bunch of fucks, which no one can deny.
So welcome to the second installment of the Friends and Rivals podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Tom Harkness. Along with me are...
Steve.
Nick Larita.
Bill.
You guys don't have last names? What's going on here?
Yeah, they don't. Only Nick and I have last names. I think it's the people in New Jersey. They're afraid to tell people their last names. I think that's what it is.
You wind up in a ditch if you tell somebody your last name up here.
Mine's difficult to pronounce.
Yeah, it's French
for me as well.
So how do people actually pronounce your last Fugger?
How do people, or how is it pronounced?
No. I know how it's pronounced, but how do people say it?
All sorts of ways, but actually my favorite is when they actually transpose the R and the G somehow, and they call me like Fergie. Like they'll actually get the R in front of the G. I can accept that people are going to butcher the name, but at least like get it in some kind of correct order. I mean, it's spelled for you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand that, but people in Steve's even family pronounce it differently.
Oh yeah,
depending on which brother you ask.
No, everybody.
Depending on which brother you ask.
Yeah, Bill.
So
What's the full last name? I always get a kick out of that.
Fougère de Champagne.
Fougère de Champagne.
Does your family have like a crest and that entire last name is on it?
I used Colgate, but I'm not sure.
Colgate and crest. That was a great one, Bill. That was a great one.
I'm bringing it tonight.
So you're bringing it. So part of the first couple of weeks we're going to do a little bit more intros, kind of like a get to know your host a little bit. So this week we're going to focus on what made us fans of our actual teams. Since Nick, this was your idea, why don't you go first? What made you an Islander fan? God, who the hell did that to you?
It's funny you should ask that question. Yeah, so my family is all from Long Island. So I was born in '81 during the dynasty. And my dad was a Islanders fan, and so he actually went to tons of games. During the dynasty years. Before that, my first game was, I don't know what year. I think it was like '85 or '86. And so man, it's I grew up all over the place. I was not really. I think like one of the only people from my mom's side of the family that doesn't still live on Long Island. So everyone's still there, except for us. And so we moved to Connecticut, Rochester, back to Jersey, then Edison for a while, and then back to South Brunswick, which we ended up staying in New Jersey. And I still stayed an Islander fan. We saw games, we saw Devils games at Continental. But to be honest, I have memories of sitting in my parents' room watching the Islanders playing against the Capitals. No, that was 92-93. Turgeon scores, my favorite player, and gets knocked over by Dale Hunter, and then Rich Pilon comes flying in like a maniac, and the whole bench is cleared. I remember like watching that game and just like freaking out, and I was the only person in my whole family doing that. So I just stayed an Islander fan. I don't know why, I just stuck, never really like left. And then I think you sit there and you're like basically a sucker for punishment for so long, you just can't get out of it. It's like being a Jets fan.
Well, yeah, we're on the same page there for sure.
We're on the same page. I think the other team, only of the four majors. I stopped being a Knicks fan completely. I just couldn't take the ownership.
I'm right with you on that one.
Which it's funny because like the Isles ownership was so bad for years, but luckily Charles Banks came in and kept the team there. So that's story from the other day, I guess. But we'll leave it there. I feel like it's a pretty good spot to stop at. But what's about you, Steven?
I became a Devils fan almost by accident. I got a job at a store in Menlo Park Mall called The Complete Athlete, and the manager there was a very, very obnoxious Rangers fan, and I had to just be against him. So that was why I became a Devils fan. And I guess out of the four of us, I probably am the most proud to be from New Jersey, and it was nice to have a team from New Jersey, root for a team from New Jersey rather than a team from New York or a team that plays in New Jersey but calls themselves New York. So that was how I became a Devils fan.
The Athlete was a great place to work, by the way.
Great store.
Great store. That's actually where Steve and I met. was in that exact store, and he yelled at me so much he gave me a job.
Juvenile delinquent.
And that is what they say is history. My experience and how I became a New York Ranger fan was actually tied to another topic that we'll have today, with regards to trades and free agencies of the 1990s, and mine was the year Messier was brought in, traded to the New York Rangers. I also found Sega Genesis hockey that year, and I was the Rangers in a line of Darren Turcotte with John Ogrodnik and Mike Gartner. I was unstoppable. So I would play Sega Genesis hockey all the time, and I would watch the Rangers every chance I got. And even though Messier was the big ticket name, fell in love with Brian Leach, and he and Don Mattingly were my sports guys, and Lawrence Taylor, and those are the first guys on the teams that got me locked in to the teams I'm in now. And Patrick Ewing was that guy for the Knicks. I think the last basketball game I actually ever watched was when Patrick Ewing came back to the Garden with the Seattle Supersonics. I think that was the last NBA basketball game that I watched. But that year I got to go to the playoffs, and the Devils and the Rangers played an epic 7-game series there. I went to game 3 that year, which they lost. It was pretty cool. I got destroyed by a lot of Devils fans sitting up in the stands, but it was a lot of fun. Yeah, but my father used to have season tickets to the Devils growing up, Devils and Nets, and through his work, they also had season tickets to the Yankees, and we would go to some Devils games. It was mostly Nets games where we sat behind the basket, and at intermission you'd go and walk to the side, and you can see the ice underneath the basketball court. And I always thought that was the coolest thing. But watching and go seeing the Nets where Darryl Dawkins and Mike Truminski were playing, and I was never really into the Devils, into hockey back then. It wasn't until I started watching the Rangers that I became a fan. So
what was it about Messier signing with the Rangers that put you over the edge?
he was the guy that was going to bring the cup to the Rangers. He was the Messiah that was coming to lead the team to the Stanley Cup, to the championship, and that hooked me. And Messier, was a very special player to me, as was Brian Leach in my early fandom with the Rangers. And for all the things I have on the wall, it's pretty evident I still like them. So that was my introduction into the hockey world and to the New York Rangers. That's why I'm a fan, and that's why I'm still a fan. So Billy, what made you a Penguins fan?
Oh, you're so proud that you're still a fan, aren't you?
I am. You know what? I stick with my team thick and thin. I don't abandon ship when things get a little tough with ownership, and may not like the guy, but you know what? I still stick and I bleed true blue.
Oh, yes, you do.
Yeah.
My story is a little more complicated than the rest, isn't it? Although I didn't realize, Steve and Tom, that you were both kind of relative newcomers to it. I mean, man, you guys, that was recent. So I started out as a Rangers fan. My father had season tickets to the Rangers, I think before I was born, but if not before I was born, then in the first couple of years of my life in my infancy. I forget when he started to get him.
Billy, best seats in the house.
Fantastic seats. Section 310, row G, seats 3 and 4, center ice, 300 level was they were great seats. And I grew up in those seats. I was going to Madison Square Garden when I was way too young to really be going there. It was not really a place for a 5-year-old, maybe when I started going there. But I saw everything there, and I got hooked on the Rangers and hooked on the sport at Madison Square Garden, watching Kelly Kissio and John Ogrodnik and Walt Podubny and all those guys, a little bit of James Patrick. I grew up on it and I loved it. And so how do I get from there to being a Penguins fan? Well, around the age of 13, the woman that I thought was my mother, I found out wasn't really my mother, and my mother actually was a waitress from Primanti Brothers.
I don't think that's true.
Kidding. Love you, mommy. I'm sure she's going to listen. No, so I followed the team religiously, obviously, for many years. My father had the season tickets through the 90s. He was at Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. I was still a Ranger fan then, and then I took over. I had those season tickets after he passed away. I kept those season tickets in the family, split them with the son of the guy that he used to split them with, and had those up until the lockout of, 2004 or whatever it was. So I was there for a lot of lean years with those tickets, spending a lot of money on that product. It was around that time that they switched ownership to Cablevision and James Dolan, and it wasn't an instantaneous thing where I rejected them as soon as they were sold. But after years of watching that team get mismanaged, and all the money that I was spending on it, and I got to the point where I didn't want to support them anymore, so I stopped with the season tickets. But it was that year after the lockout when they were in first place for a lot of the season, and then they blew it in the last couple of weeks. And their arch rival Devils, came in and took first place from them. Not only took first place from them in the final days of the season, but swept them right out of the playoffs. And I'm sitting there thinking, I hate this owner. I hate everybody on this team. I can't support them anymore. And it was my midlife crisis at a younger age, but I just started. I believe in a free market system, and I started looking for a new team to root for. And the Pittsburgh Penguins, and had drafted Sidney Crosby. Obviously, coming out of that lockout, was his first season. They missed the playoffs that year. I was a little hesitant to jump on that bandwagon because of they didn't seem like they had their act together either. I thought at the time. I mean, signing a guy like Ziggy Palffy, it reminded me a little bit too much of the Rangers, how they would used to just go after free agent names and things, and I'm like, I don't know. But after a little research, I wanted to root for a team in the division because I still hated the Devils, and I still hated the Islanders, and I still hated the Flyers. Fuck the Flyers.
Fuck the Flyers.
So I did want to root for a team and kind of continue that feeling of those rivalries and watch those teams with those rivalries again. But I was choosing another team, and I chose the Penguins, and from there, they haven't, like any team, there's been ups and downs, but they haven't disappointed me to the point where I've had to throw my hands up and say, I can't do this anymore. I really like that team. I like the ownership. And I've always felt like they've tried to put a competitive product on the ice, which is really the key for me. I want to feel like there's somebody who's invested in it, and not, at best, James Dolan is indifferent about the Rangers. And while that works in their favor, because you look at the Knicks that he is not indifferent about and see what a disaster they are. But that's not enough for me. To be just indifferent about the organization that you own, that you run, it's not enough for me. So
was Mario the owner already by the time you started rooting for them, or was that right around the same time?
I can't remember exactly when he took over, but yeah, he was in the ownership group by then. Yeah.
Okay.
And he's the face of the ownership there. Burkle's the real owner. Burkle's the money guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always liked that team of Ron and Mario. Yeah.
And when you were a Rangers fan, what was your take on Mario?
I always had a lot of respect for him. I mean, he was one of the great players in the game, but he was a rival, and I certainly wasn't rooting for him to do well.
But it wasn't you hated him like you hate anybody that ever played for the Flyers.
No, I never had that kind of hatred for him. No.
Coincidentally, with your hiatus to the Penguins, in came Glenn Sather, and that's when James Dolan kind of got hands off with the New York Rangers, and they had some success after that. Can't say the same thing for the Knicks, where he has been hands on, but for the Rangers, I think it's been a pretty decent ride. Would have liked a cup in there, but so the puck bounces. Week in review time. Not a lot happened during the course of the week, but a lot did happen in the past 24 hours. But before we get into that, let's go around and talk about the week in review per team. Steve, why don't you lead off with the Devils?
We had a whole lot of nothing. We've got games being canceled left and right across the NCAA, overseas. The big news is that guys are starting to be called back. And one of them wasn't necessarily called back, but the big story today was that Hischier is starting to make his trek back to...
I saw that photo on Twitter, which, by the way, I got to give a lot of props to Devils Twitter. They put the baby Yoda meditating on top of the Prudential Center with the beams going up, and that was yesterday. And today they reposted and said, "Oh my God, it's working." One of the funniest things that I saw in recent history on Twitter.
They just recently caught a lot of acclaim for being one of the better Twitter followers for a team. The one thing that shocked me with the Hischier thing is he's bringing sticks with him. Can't the guy get sticks in the United States? Does he have to travel from Switzerland to New Jersey with hockey sticks?
They may be the sticks that he was training with in the offseason, and he got comfortable with them and he likes them.
Stop. They're going to break. they're gonna break on a slap shot anyway in 2 days.
All right. So you're saying sports players are not superstitious?
Superstition is one thing, but
Are you kidding me? This coming from a guy who says never shave on game day.
he's gonna break those sticks in the 10-day training camp. I think stick is a little bit different. If he was on a hot streak scoring with a stick, that's one thing. You're not even preseason training. You're off-season training with sticks. I don't think that
maybe his girlfriend
that's a
rubbed them for
superstition.
luck or something.
Well, maybe.
Maybe could happen, or his grandmother or something like that. You don't know. You don't know the backstory.
They would rub them differently, right? The grandmother and the girlfriend probably would rub the sticks differently.
I would think so.
So what are you proposing, Steve? You want to lock him out over this? Are you just fed up with him for trying to take hockey
I
sticks
don't
with
think
him?
he should be the captain. If you got to travel with sticks, you don't get to be the captain.
Fair enough.
You're basically just a bag boy at that point.
But
second
maybe the Devils don't have enough money. Maybe they're one of the ownerships to where that they have to worry
They
about
have
things like that.
Some of the richest owners in the game.
Billionaires fighting millionaires, right?
That was it. And there's just a whole lot of, like I said, NCAA games being canceled, seasons being pushed back. 2 guys on the team, on the World Junior team that Holtz is going to play on, they had another 2 guys test positive. They might have to pull out of the tournament completely. Coach, multiple players, they're saying they might not even make the trip.
For Team Sweden. And Rangers prospect number 1 center Carl Henriksen was the center on that line with Alexander Holtz and Lucas Raymond. That would have been a formidable number 1 line for Sweden going up against anybody really in the World Juniors. But I think that, Canada's loaded. And I don't think there were a lot of teams that were going to put up much of a fight against them this year. But with that line, I think Sweden could have done something.
But you've seen it happen in the World Juniors. They get to overtime, in the knockout rounds, you get to overtime, you get through overtime, then it's a shootout. Then all bets are off. It doesn't matter who, all bets are off. Definitely teams, the less talented team has definitely won those games.
No, I agree 100%. But I think we can all agree that Team Canada was loaded for sure.
Yeah.
Or is, for that matter, is.
So I just expect now the guys coming back from overseas, we're just going to see more and more and more as the week goes on.
Billy, what happened with the Penguins this week?
Oh, so much. So much.
It has really been just a riveting offseason for them, hasn't it?
Yeah, so a couple things that back to the World Junior tournament. We had just gotten the news this week, and who knows what's going to happen with that tournament whatsoever. But the Penguins got a couple of kids named to a couple of rosters. So Joel Blomqvist for Finland, goaltender, and another goaltender for Sweden, and he's got the best goaltender name maybe ever, Kalle Klang. So. Oh, that last name has a ring to it.
You actually just spurred something in my brain. I saw ESPN is doing the top 100 best hockey names, and they're doing it in a bracketry system. And I made sure to find one name on there. Zarley Zalapski is a 6 seed, by the way.
That's
just
wild
throwing it out
because
there.
He's going to come up later in the show.
Oh my goodness!
I love it.
Of course he is. Just saying.
So besides those kids, there was a signing for the AHL. He's going to start over in Wilkes-Barre, and then they might share him a little bit with Scranton a bit later on. But Jordan Nolan is now a member of those baby Penguins. So Jordan Nolan, of course, son of famous former head coach Ted Nolan. And also a couple of times Stanley Cup winner, or he had some role. His name's on the cup twice for the LA Kings in 2012, 2014. So signed him up to provide some toughness, some leadership. He's not on the kind of contract. I'm not a real contract guy. Don't know how those work, but he didn't sign the kind of contract where the Penguins can call him up. He's an AHL guy.
I don't think anybody on this podcast remember either the 2012 or 2014 Stanley Cup final.
Fair enough. I think they beat the Devils in one, and they beat the Rangers in the other.
I don't remember.
Along with the fuck the Flyers, we want to say fuck Alec Martinez too, by the way.
Well, you could say that.
Yes, I can say that.
And then my last little story for the Penguins this week is a little bit juicy. So the TSN Canada reporting a story that a former Wilkes-Barre Penguins assistant coach, Jared Skald, filed a lawsuit against the Penguins for wrongful termination after he blew the whistle on a former head coach who had sexually assaulted his wife. That's what they're claiming. So
was it Martin Brodeur?
I don't judge these things. I don't know what happened, but Billy Guerin was named in it as somebody who was like sweeping things under the rug a little bit, and
wow.
And so controversy and things happening down in Wilkes-Barre, and Scranton's just relieved that it has nothing to do with them.
Sister-in-law fucking is way different than spousal abuse. All
I
right?
mean,
Way different.
Just saying.
And so that is the week for the Penguins.
All right, I guess I'll go. Pretty quiet week for the Isles. A few notable things. I think one of the biggest things that's been going on, which really you guys probably don't give a crap about, but the building
You're probably
is
right.
getting closer and closer to looking like a real arena. I was just reading an article. They were from a couple days ago. They're putting up the platforms for the train stop, which will help get people to Belmont very easy. Much like you get to the Rock or to MSG. It'd be really nice to have the ability to get to the game. I mean, if you guys have done that too. You guys have both been to your respective stadiums, or both stadiums, really.
Is that Long Island Railroad?
Yeah.
And how far past Citi Field is that?
Good question.
I know it's a different line, but
it's nowhere near Citi Field. It's over by
Coney.
Coney. It's past Coney Island and
just
JFK
time-wise.
Airport.
I'll have to look at the map. I'm not even sure. I haven't ridden on it in a while, but
how long? If you take the train to Penn Station, New York, how far from there to get out to Belmont? 30 minutes?
I don't know. It's a good question. I'm not sure. I have to look it up on the. I haven't really ridden I haven't ridden the LIR in a while.
He's so North Carolina now. I haven't ridden that train yet.
I rode it. There's no. Where's the train? Where's the
Roden.
tractor?
I was thinking Rick
They got
Roden.
barbecue on this
Weird
train.
sports thing.
Y'all got some earwax in y'all ears. So anyway, that's looking. It's getting there. And we're scheduled to play, pretty soon, in a year. So looking good.
And does that stadium look normal, or does it look like Barclays?
Inside
built it
look
with blind
normal.
spots for hockey.
It's built for hockky, so I mean, I hope so.
I'm at the outside.
Yeah, it looks like a pretty squarish,
normal building.
Looks like a normal building. Anyway, so that's going on. And Oliver Wallstrom's been back from injury. He's had a couple goals this past week, an assist in a few games. Looking like he's picked right back up from where he was after he had that nasty tumble into the boards and was out for a few weeks with a shoulder injury. Other than that, we're going to have some guys start getting called back too. Last thing was you guys mentioned Team Sweden. Isles 2019 first overall draft pick was Simon Holmstrom, and he was supposed to be on the Sweden team or on the camp. At least he was invited to the camp. We'll see what happens there. Who knows if that team gets ravaged and they play some guys or don't play at all. Who knows? So I'll be watching that too to see if they end up even playing, and if they do, if he can make the team.
Right.
If it's because of injury or because injury because of COVID-19 or because he makes the team flat out or not. So it'll be interesting to see. Pretty quiet week.
Over in Rangerland, pretty quiet week as well. There's lots of World Juniors news, especially with Larry Brooks putting the article out about Lafreniere and Kakko not playing in the World Juniors for Canada and Finland, and JD basically saying we don't want them to get injured. It's really that simple. We've invested a lot of time and effort, and we want them in camp ready to go. Carl Hendrickson, as mentioned before, is out as the number one center for Team Sweden between Lucas Raymond and Alexander Holt. Would have been really good. And today reports Matthew Robertson is unfit to play for Team Canada, has been asked to leave with 4 other players. Now, it's a non-hockey related decision, and there's no confirmation of any COVID cases, but he was classified as unfit to play. There were reports that he was struggling in the first couple exhibition games, but more on that hopefully in the next coming days, to where it will be revealed that it was a COVID-19 positive case, because those unfit to plays kind of leaves a lot of question marks in the air for sure. One other thing came out from the NHL is that their odds-on favorite for the Calder Cup came out this year for the upcoming season, and the 2 top players on that list were New York Rangers players, with Alexei Lafreniere and Igor Shesterkin, both eligible and will be rookies this year. Now, I did did some research for the past 7 years of people who were supposed to win versus who actually won, and 4 out of the 3 were different. So we'll see at the end of this year if either of those guys wins the Calder. But last year, Cal McCarr was supposed to win it, and he did.
Did you say 4 out of the 3?
4 out of the 3?
Yeah, we're different.
You
Or
mean
4 out of
4
the
out of
7. 4 out of
7?
7. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It was 4. It was 3 that were my brain got all like with my mouth right now, got all jumbled up.
Hopefully it's COVID-19, or else it doesn't seem right that you would get all confused like that. So we're just gonna hope for a positive result there.
Do you know Ryan Strome was the odds-on favorite to win the Calder the year Nathan McKinnon won it? Yeah, I couldn't believe that either. He was the odds-on favorite. Yeah, and the other 2 times where the odds-on favorite actually won was Austin Matthews, and the year prior to that was Artemi Panarin. A lot of rookie talk, a lot of World Juniors. It's really the only thing that's been going on for the past week until yesterday happened, last night and this morning, where they have finally agreed on the financial aspect of things, and now they are rocking and rolling, and things are starting to come out sporadically about what's going to happen for next year. A lot of these things affect not only the teams that were in the playoffs last year, but the teams that were not in the playoffs last year, and have an adverse effect on them as well. And let's get into a couple of these things. So first off, January 13th is the new target start date with a 56-game season that will end around the beginning of May, and the Stanley Cup will be awarded between the end of June and the beginning of July. I believe, as we talked about last week with regards to the NHL wanting everything, or NBC wanted to finish everything before the Olympics would have started. That is right in their timeline. Now, getting back to training camps, they were saying on or about January 1st is when teams would report to training camps, have a 10-day camp, no exhibition games, right into it. Now, the 7 teams that did not make the playoffs last year were supposed to have an extra week. They're not. Steve, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm annoyed that they're not getting a little bit extra, but at the same point, I don't think it would make that much of a difference. After 9 months, another week of skating isn't going to make a big difference. Plus, as soon as these guys get to their cities, they're going to start skating together. Maybe not formal practices, but they're going to start skating together. So I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference.
I tend to agree with you. They got more than a month. By the time they get here, they quarantine, they start skating, they all start getting together. I think you're right about that. Everybody is kind of in the same boat. Whether you stop skating in July or August, or whether you stop skating in March, it's still been a hell of a long time since you've been together, organized on your team, going through all this stuff, getting prepared for the season.
How many practices did they have in the return to play before the game started?
It was probably about a week.
So
and
a week's
then
worth
they
of
had
practices, and then a week's worth of getting swept. The Rangers only really skated twice.
Well, they had an exhibition game in between there too. So at least they got 4 full games and about a week of additional skating.
So really, but still, we're only talking about then 2.5 weeks.
It was 2. Yeah, it was about 2 weeks.
So
it was about 2 weeks. I think you're right on the button with that.
Not that much different.
No, not that much difference at all. What was interesting to me, though, is there's some concern whether the AHL is going to start in early February, and what are the rosters going to look like, especially with COVID protocols and safety protocols that they're going to have. Some things that they're looking at right now is having taxi squads, having expanded rosters, and the expanded rosters and the taxi squads may or may not count against your cap, which is, I think, should happen. That way, if your team does get hit with the COVID bug, you have players that are ready and ready to step in that night, so you hopefully don't have to postpone games. So I like that. It gives people an opportunity to be with the big clubs, at least until the AHL schedule starts. There's a lot of things that obviously need to be hashed out. There is a call with the Board of Governors scheduled for Wednesday at 4:00 tomorrow. So hopefully things get approved by the Board of Governors tomorrow, and we start hearing things in a very short matter after that.
I just want to touch on that. I think that those players on the taxi squad, they shouldn't be allowed to practice with everybody else. They should have to practice separately, almost like they would if they were on an AHL club. It also helps prevent them that if there is some sort of outbreak on the team, they're practicing at a different time, not with those guys. They would be less likely to be.
Yeah, I could see that. But they're probably in the same building, but probably skate the hour before that the rest of the team skates, something like that.
Yeah,
but you want want
saying
them.
they shouldn't
Yeah,
be
you
to-
want them
but
in
they
the same
shouldn't be
area.
together, not at the
No.
same practice.
Different bubble. Yeah.
So they shouldn't be skating an hour before. They should be like skating in a different practice rink altogether, just
Or-
in another part of town.
Or one in the morning and one in the afternoon, hours in between.
So that way they can go in and clean and
Clean
sterilize
out,
and do
right.
all those things. Okay. I mean, hey, look, that's fair to me. We have no saying in it.
Well, we
know that, right?
know that the powers that be do listen to us.
They
Because
absolutely
they have
do.
taken our recommendations in the past.
I could not agree with you more. They have, although I can't cite one thing.
The multiple outdoor games.
Yes, we certainly have talked about that for sure. But there is a lot of excitement. There's a lot of buzz. There is no more waiting anymore. Part of the agenda that I did send out yesterday was still waiting, question mark, but that certainly got me in a better mood for today. At least knowing that we didn't start this podcast on a canceled season is one thing. And two, that there is going to be hockey this year. I think we're all really excited. And now this is going to be this is the log that breaks the old lob jam, right? In the river. That things are going to start to happen now. You're going to start to see the Barzell contract be finalized. You're going to start seeing players traded out of Tampa Bay. You're going to start seeing some movement from teams who have to get cap compliant. There's a ton of them that are over the cap right now. So it's going to be a very, very busy couple of weeks leading up to training camps. It's going to be a very exciting time once training camps happen. I'm just very excited about all this, and I want to hear everybody else's excitement and enthusiasm.
I'm very excited.
Yay.
Yay.
You guys are you
Yeah.
guys are just the best guys in the world.
I mean, it's great to see movement. I just wish that they decided not to do this pissing match for so long, just to come to the agreement that they're not going to make any changes to the financials. I feel like they could have done that more amicably, but we are where we are, and now we're going to go through the whole game of trying to make sure they work out the rest of the details without too much of a delay. I think we've seen some different dates all over the place. Mid-January. I've seen February 1st. We'll see. It's all rumors at this point until we get some actual, pad to paper with all the details that they're trying to work out. But, it's gonna be an exciting, couple of weeks. We'll see. I'm sure, by the end of the week, we're gonna see en masse players heading back to their teams, from overseas. I mean, I think we've already started to see some players start to be recalled. Have you guys? Did someone mention that? Was somebody recalled already or no?
Just
Yeah,
from
Steve did.
overseas, they're starting to get recalled.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, that's what I was saying. But yeah. Well, anyway. So yeah, I'm excited about that. Excited to see what happens with Barzy. Hope his contract's not going to kill us, and then hopefully have enough money to sign another defenseman. That's my hope. So getting, I think the funny thing is we've been talking about off-season stuff for so long now. It's kind of like it's getting long in the tooth. Just want to get to talking about some lines and things and finalizing the actual look of this league for the season. So.
Yeah, and
Andy
hey, that
Green-
guy looks good. That guy looks good in camp, man. I can't wait to see him on the ice. Or hey, he's gonna make the club, and I
Right.
can't wait for all that too. You're 100% right.
Is Andy Green still on their radar?
So the word is that few players are being signed that they've essentially signed a deal, but they haven't announced it yet until the Barzal deal is made official, or maybe even that they get word like, why would you sign these guys for a year if there's no season?
Yeah.
So maybe that's more likely the scenario. They're just waiting for the season to be, officially on. So Matt Martin, Corey Schneider as a backup goalie in the AHL, Andy Green, those three are the ones that everyone's pretty convinced are already signed. Essentially, there was some maybe Brassard may or may not come back. I think he will. He should come back cheap, and he was pretty okay. And now that we have a real third line center that's taking a spot, I mean, essentially, he's not a bad guy to have. And it sounds like from what we were seeing is there's talk of even expanding the overall number of roster spots from 23 26 was on the table. So that could be a possibility with COVID. They may just have to carry more guys, and having a few extra vets like Brassard would not be a bad thing. So if we could fit
Big
him in, it'd be
game
great.
brass.
Yeah. So we'll see. What about you, Billy? How you feeling?
I'm excited. Yeah, I mean, hockey coming back. Look, one thing though, that I think you guys have heard me say a bunch, but our listening audience probably hasn't heard me say yet, is that I hate the NHL. Absolutely despise this league. They're so poorly run.
Can I ask you a question? Is there a league that you do like?
That is a good question. Well, the only other sport I really follow is baseball.
Right,
The
because you've
NFL's
written
in the
off
video, so.
football because it's too much of a yeah,
Um,
exactly.
But look, I mean, but I love this. I love the sport of hockey, and the NHL delivers that. And so when they come back, I am back. And this was nothing. In the grand scheme of things, the shenanigans they've pulled, delaying this announcement a few days because the owners are making this desperate money grab to see what they can get out of the players. I mean, this is kind of par for the course. We're past it. Great. Let's play some hockey. That's how I feel. Excited.
Game on,
Game on.
as they once said. And I could not agree with you more. Very exciting. This will be an exciting week. Finally, we get an exciting week, not a make or break week. We get an exciting week of agreements and really the plan being put together. So by the time we do our podcast next week, we should have hopefully have a full understanding of what the season is actually going to look like and timeframes. Now there's one caveat to all of this, and that's COVID. And COVID could really derail everything and put the start of the season out until the beginning of February, as Nick mentioned earlier, and shorten the season considerably down from 56 to maybe 48, 42 games. So that is kind of still on the table, and it's a waiting game. And Bill Shakespeare over in the UK got his COVID vaccine this morning, and he was an old guy. I read in the paper that he was like an 87-year-old guy. His name happened to be William Shakespeare, and he was one of the first 2 old people to receive the COVID vaccine. So we'll see what happens. Anybody? I left dead air there for a second. Do we want?
Oh no, we left dead air there for a second. William Shakespeare.
Yeah. No,
I can't help. That was the fucking guy's name. What do you want from me?
Yeah. Yeah, it's cute. It's real cute. But I think all the problem with this whole thing, right, is all the sports leagues are going to be watching this, and I think obviously the NBA and NHL are going to be really gearing up, and just as things are exploding here, NFL's already been feeling it, but they're going to be winding down soon. They're getting closer to the end of the season, so they're just trying to get it done. Once they get to the playoffs, I mean, they can really the teams will be you'd imagine the teams would try to be very strict with their player personnels, traveling and partying, and really be like most likely, except for the Steelers, they'll probably all get COVID and miss the playoffs. But I'm just saying that the rest of the league will probably be strict about it, compared to, say, the NHL and NBA are just starting, and they have to figure out how to keep a league going for this entire time. And it doesn't sound like they're going to do – they could do the bubble still, I guess, in some sort of capacity. But they have to figure out also all the logistics that we've kind of not talked too much about. A little bit we touched on the Canadian border and how they're going to keep the teams in Canada, I guess. We'll see how that works out with travel, not embargo, travel restrictions between the two countries. So that's a problem if you can't leave. I mean, they're going to have to keep the team,
I would
keep
assume
that
that's the
entire
next
division
thing
thing.
we're going to hear about.
Yeah. That's a big one. How logistically do they handle this? Now,
well, there was two things. Yeah, there was two things I read today with regards to that. Was there is Vancouver and Calgary have their AHL affiliates in the U.S. and they're not going to bring their AHL affiliates to Canada. They're going to keep them in the U.S. So I don't know how that's going to go with back and forth with quarantine and calling up players from the AHL and all that other stuff. Again, we'll find out more detail. Another thing that I've read as well as there is a percentage of buildings that could open up and have a number of fans be in the stands to watch the game and get a gate for the game. But in order to do that, there is paying security, there is paying the concessions, there is paying the people for the memorabilia, there's shirt sales, there's parking people, there's ticket takers, there's all these other peoples that they have to pay. And does the amount of people that are coming into the building, is there enough money in there to even allow fans to even come in with the amount of money that has to go out? So there's lots of things that are going to be talked about in next couple of weeks. But I thought those are very interesting articles and very interesting things to be brought up. Just because you can have fans in your building, owners may not want to have them there because of the cost of operations within the building itself. So I thought that was very interesting. So we'll keep an eye on that in the next couple of weeks for sure.
There's got to be some cost to having the entire game. There's got to be some kind of fixed cost to having an event at the arena. But all those other costs of the parking people and security and concessions and et cetera, that should all just be proportional to the amount of people that they let in. There's no reason they need to have the full staff there if they're going to have 10% of capacity of fans. So I can't see that being that big of a hurdle. Just
No, I don't think it's a hurdle. I just think it's something that needs to be hashed out at the club level themselves, whether they're going to allow fans or not. That's all. So they just have to weigh their options and see, if that makes sense. Obviously, having fans in the building, I mean, even if it costs you some money or if you break even, I think you should do it anyway. Just that's just me. That's just from the fans' perspective. That's not from a business person perspective for sure. So.
From a business perspective, the longer you give a customer a chance to break his habit, the more likely it is they are to break the habit. So if people get in the habit of not going to games, the odds of them coming back decrease significantly. And I'm not talking about the diehard fan. I'm talking about the occasional 2 games a year person that they really count on.
Not give me a D guy.
No, definitely not give me a D guy. He's going to be there.
Yeah, Dancing Larry will be there for sure if he's allowed to, for sure.
Do the Islanders have a super fan at their games?
Oh, we
Nick.
used to have this guy. His name was
not Nick?
His name's was Goldie. It wasn't Nick. No. He's like, you probably saw him actually, Steve. If you've ever been to a Devil's Isles game, he was this guy, big overweight, not huge overweight, but like,
he's a hockey fan. All you gotta do is say hockey fan.
Hockey fan, middle-aged hockey fan. He had this gold wig thing he'd wear and his hat.
Yep.
And he was so obnoxious. And he'd be, even if I'd be watching the Isles at the Devils game, he'd be there, and people would like bone him, tell him to shut up and go F off. He wasn't he was just every time a goal happened, he'd turn around and be like, make a big deal about it. Not just to stand up and get all excited, but in the middle of the game, he'd be standing up and doing all sorts of
gold wig was his shtick.
He wore a gold wig, and we called him Goldie, and you saw him everywhere at the games. But honestly, I'm sure there's always the people, you know how it goes. There's always people at the games that are always the rile the crowd up.
Yeah.
They got him here, and I don't know the guys at this point there now, but that was Goldie was the one that I always remember because he traveled. He was always there, and you're just like, God, look at this guy. Give us a bad fucking name. Sit down, he was our asshole, I guess.
The Yankees had the bang the plate guy, right?
Oh yeah, no, was it a plate or was it? I thought it was a bell or something like that. It was a bell. I think it was a cowbell.
The Mets had the cowbell guy.
No, it was the old guy with the bell that you ring.
No, I think it was a plate, and you would bang on it with a spoon.
It was a metal plate.
A metal plate, yeah.
It was a metal plate.
You banged on it with the spoon.
Might have even been a pot.
Maybe.
Oh.
Maybe.
It was some kitchen thing.
Whatever it was.
He's fertilizer right now. Who cares?
Oh my goodness gracious!
Good Lord.
He's fertilizer right now.
Ugh.
Oy,
Hate those people.
Is that guy that used the Devil's chant still there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the give me the D guy.
He took a hiatus, but he's been back a lot more in the last couple of years.
Give me a V. I love that guy. He's so loud. It's amazing.
I think he got jealous because they were starting to bring in the Putty character from Seinfeld. They were bringing him to games more. And the give me a D guy was like, no, this is my shtick. This is me. I'm doing this.
He's just drowning his sorrows with the fireman Ed.
Yeah.
All for different reasons.
Rejected unofficial mascots club.
Didn't he retire because the team was just terrible
Yeah,
and he just couldn't take it anymore?
Back. He'll be back.
Oh, you're talking about fire. I thought you were talking about
no.
the Jets defensive coordinator. Oh, because he just couldn't take it anymore.
Oh.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Too soon?
Let's not talk.
Steve?
Can we not,
Steve, too soon?
not-
I'm sorry, buddy.
Let's not talk to Jets in this podcast. I really.
Wow.
This is not a
Wow.
good week
I
for Jets
really
fans.
made the mistake of turning the game off and going, wow, the Jets finally won a game.
Let's move on
as a
to
Jets
the next
fan,
topic.
that never happens. Okay.
Let's move on to the next topic.
Yeah, let's
Oh,
blitz them with 5 seconds left to go. That'll fool them.
So, Bill, what was the best trade or free agent signing the Penguins made during the 90s?
Well, the best trade was, and this is where Tom had mentioned Zarley Zalapski before, and I'm going to mention him again. This is so great. Every time I get to mention Zarley Zalapski, as Tom said, what a great name. I mean, I could do this all day. I'm probably going to try to find a way to slip Zarley Zalapski into every podcast from now on. But yeah, best trade for the Penguins before right around 1990 or early in 1990 or the 1991 season. John Cullen, Zarley Zalapski, and Jeff Parker were shipped to the Hartford Whalers in exchange for Ron Francis, Ulf Samuelson, and Grant Jennings.
That was a good one.
Yeah, that was good. Hartford was just, I mean, they were asleep at the wheel, man, with the talent that passed through. They could have been a Stanley Cup contender with the talent that just passed through that city that they just traded away for no good reason whatsoever. But yeah, probably none better than Ron Francis, Hall of Fame center. And Ulfie Samuelson provided so much toughness on the blue line. I mean, it was, you know, not a coincidence that they made that trade and then won back-to-back championships. I mean, they had Lemieux, you know, prior to that, but it was not culminating into any long playoff runs until they made that trade. So
what about a free agent signing?
Best free agent signing then, right around obviously the same time in the 1990s, was Brian Trottier. So when Trottier wrapped up his career with the Islanders, apparently from what I heard, they offered him a front office job. They assumed his career was over as a player, and he did not take the front office job, and he decided instead to become the third line center for that Penguins team for the next 2 seasons, and adding a couple of more Stanley Cups to his resume. He provided a lot of stability in that third line role, and I mean, you could just imagine, you know, you get through the talent of a Lemieux and a Yager and et cetera, and the wings they had playing up there, Kevin Stevens and whoever else, and then there you have on the third line one of the great scorers in the history of the sport. Yeah, okay, a little bit older, but I mean, third line guy, tremendous free agent signing for them, and another thing that led to those cups.
Boy, he was undoubtedly a great player, Brian Trottier, but I think we'd all agree he was the worst head coach ever. Rangers had him for a little while, and that was oof. He lasted a half a season. That was brutal.
He was a mole.
Is that what it was? Is that what it was?
That's when he was with the Islanders front office.
Well, I guess speaking about the New York Rangers, I'll go next, and I overdid it as usual. So best trades. I mean, it's the obvious one. In October 4th of 1991, Mark Messier, and future considerations for Lou DeBrusque, Bernie Nichols, Stephen Rice, and future considerations that turned to David Shaw. By the way, the future considerations that came over from Edmonton with Messier was Jeff Bukaboom. And that directly led to Messier's tenure with the Rangers, his first tenure with the Rangers, which led to a Stanley Cup and really, you know, solidified the talent and the experience and the greatness that they needed in order to win that championship. I also did the worst trade, and there were a plenty of them. I mean, you can look at either one of the Peter Nedved trades, either coming or going, and they were awful. The Glenn Anderson for Mike Gartner deal was god awful, but the worst one was actually, and something happened before that. And the Rangers offer sheet to Joe Sakic. When Colorado matched that, the Rangers panicked, and then they traded a 1998 second round pick and future considerations and a 2000 conditional pick that was never exercised for Pat LaFontaine. And LaFontaine, they were just getting damaged goods with him. And, you know, Steve has always mentioned when you don't make a deal or when something doesn't happen, you panic and you make a wrong move. And that was the wrong move for the Rangers because they brought in Pat LaFontaine, who was a hit away from retirement. And that hit actually came from his own goddamn teammate, Mike Keane. So that was the worst one. With regards to free agent signings, it was Wayne Gretzky, without question. It was, I actually had 1A between Adam Graves, who was actually an offer sheet signee that the Rangers actually got in 1991, who turned into, 50 goal scorer, has his number retired. But I think when you sign Wayne Gretzky to your team, it has to be one of the premier signings. And that 97 season was just an incredible season, watching Messier and Gretzky on one and second line centers and bringing them all the way to the conference final. And if they didn't get injured, who knows what happened against Philadelphia. They had a lot of key players going down in that run with Kovalev and Nicholas Sundstrom and a couple other players. They had Russ Courtnall was the right wing for Messier and Graves in that playoff series. And it was just too much to overcome. Worst, Valerie Kamensky. He was without question the worst free agent signing of the 1990s. He came over with so much hubbub and playing on the line with playing on the line with Joe Sakic and scoring all those goals. And it was just an utter disaster to bring him in. And he got bought out the following year. Actually, with Joe Sakic, if the Rangers did sign him in that year, he scored 63 points on 64 games. But 3 years later, he had 54 goals and 64 assists for 118 points in that 2000-2001 season. Oh, what could have been if the Rangers signed, if Joe Sakic didn't have his offer sheet countered by the Colorado Avalanche. Oh boy, oh boy.
You just can't pin your hopes on picking up a guy off an offer sheet like that. It's just it is bad planning, because if you want him that bad, so's the team that he's coming from.
No, I agree. And you know, even last year when we saw with Sebastian Aho, when he got the offer sheet from Montreal, that Carolina was going to match regardless.
Yep.
If an offer sheet came into Barzell, Lou made it very clear that he was going to match it no matter what the offer was. So if you want a team that bad, odds are the team that he's on, they want him just as bad or more. So I agree. But man, can you imagine that team? Just having Joe Sakic on the Rangers would have been incredible, but it wasn't meant to be.
Nick?
So I actually was looking through a lot of the 90s trades, and it's because we're in the 90s, I miss out on a lot of the really bad trades. But you know, it's funny, I was looking through it, and I think really the best trade that, you know, we made was probably, you know, the rebuild trade, you know, trading away LaFontaine and a few other players for Pierre Turgeon, Benoit Hogue, Louis Krupp. Those three were part of the kind of the retooling, and trading LaFontaine at the time was pretty big deal. He was the face of the franchise, but you know, he had a great season, you know, one great season in Buffalo and injuries, but which really derailed his career. But that was, I feel like, really the biggest and best trade we made. Acquiring Steve Thomas for aging Brent Sutter was pretty good, but you know, that was part of the pieces they started to put together to retool the team in the early 90s. But really, there's not a lot of good stuff that happened after really the whole decade. It was really pretty much after the 1993 season and the Cup run, it really was not very memorable. And then I looked back at really the worst trade. We just missed out on all the really bad trades. By the way, all the Milbury trades are all like,
well, we're getting to those in the next couple of episodes, so don't you worry. You will have your time to shine. Don't worry, Zdeno Chara. Don't worry, it's coming.
We'll have to carve out a half hour for Nick for that.
Yeah. Who's that? What's worse, Roberto Luongo, or was it Zdeno Chara, or was it?
We'll save that for next week, man. That's the next week. I think the trading Palffy away was brutal because he was such a fan favorite. He was like the only guy to really, at the time, we didn't want to, like, trading away the best player, the most exciting player it's really hard, and you know, to deal with, especially after they had traded away Turgeon, you know, years back, and then we get Ziggy comes around and we trade him away, and it's like, it's brutal. It's really brutal when you trade away your best players. And they did get Olli Jokinen and a first round. They ended up acquiring the 99 first round pick, which is from LA, which is the number 8 overall. They ended up with Taylor Pyatt, who really didn't really do much for us. Matthew Byron was also part of the trade, but it was a big. No matter what assets we got at that trade, and the Olli Jokinen ended up going, you know, as part of the trade for with Luongo, you know, which didn't work out very well for the Isles, as we'll find out next week. Just trading away your franchise player is never good, and it's hard. You know, ask Boston how it went for, you know, trading away. I mean, it didn't really matter, I guess, for them in the long scheme, in the grand scheme of things, trading Joe Thornton away for pieces that didn't really do much for them, but they stole some cups, but whatever. Screw those guys. Anyway, so that's it, man. I think those are the two. Free agency, I didn't really look at the free agents because I really couldn't remember the free agent stuff. And I actually had a hard time kind of looking it up to really jog my memory of who actually signed with us. And that was really important, to be honest.
I agree. I had a hard time too. Yeah, it was only in the late 90s where that came more of a thing, where there was, I agree.
You know, it wasn't. It's funny we thinking about it, but like really, there was a lot more trades back then. we had how many freaking rounds in the draft? Like 13 rounds or whatever it was back in the 90s. It was a lot.
Yeah.
Early 90s, I should say. So I don't have any good free agencies to go through, good and bad, just because it was not memorable. So I just said, F it. Next week, if we can do the 2000s, that'll definitely pick up. I think we'll have some good ones in there for all of our teams. So
there was a lot of despair in the early 2000s for the New York Rangers. So we'll definitely be with you on that one. Steve?
My best trade and my best free agent signing actually bookend the decade. So the best trade they had of the decade of the 90s was actually on draft day 1990. They traded a first and a second to Calgary for a first and 2 seconds. Calgary moved from number 20 up to number 11, and with the number 11 pick, they got Trevor Kidd. The Devils dropped from number 11 to number 20, and with number 20, they got Martin Brodeur, who was the third ranked goalie that year behind Kidd and Felix Potvin. And I would say that right there is a franchise-making trade. Now, everybody knows I am not the biggest Brodeur fan, attributing a lot of his success to playing behind the players that he did, but you still can't take away what he did for his career. And for best free agent happening at the end of the decade, it's actually, for me, in my mind, it's a tie between two. They're both actually undrafted free agent signings. The first one was Brian Rafalski, who at the time was playing over in Finland. He was actually ranked the best player not playing in the NHL at the time. And they signed him June 18th, 1999. 2 years prior to that, they signed John Madden, who they actually discovered while they were scouting Brendan Morrison, because Brendan Morrison was a draft pick that they had that was playing at Michigan. While they were watching him play, they kept seeing John Madden make stellar play after stellar play, and they realized he was undrafted. As soon as he graduated, they jumped in and signed him. So those are my two. He won. They were both on the 2000 and 2003 Cup teams. I didn't realize this, but Rafalski actually finished in the top 15 in Norris Trophy voting like 4 times in his career. I never really thought of him as that caliber defenseman, that he would garner that much respect from the voters.
Were they all with the Devils or with the
all
Wings?
all with the Devils.
Okay.
Yeah. And Madden would go on to win a Selke Trophy 1 year and then be a finalist for 2 other years while he's with the team. So those two are my best free agent signings.
Top 15 is nothing special in the Norris Trophy voting. I mean, James Patrick was number 16 both times, I think.
James Patrick was an outstanding defenseman, and that's a Devils fan saying that. When you think Norris Trophy, you do not think Brian Rafalski.
No, never did.
You're 100% right about that.
So, Steve, is Scott Stevens' case? Is he's kind of neither how he got to the Devils?
Yeah,
he's
I wouldn't
basically
consider
arbitration.
I wouldn't consider it a free agency or a trade.
Yeah,
that was compensation.
He was awarded. Yeah, he was compensation. I'm surprised you didn't go with Niedermeyer though.
I was thinking one of those too.
I was thinking Niedermeyer. Niedermeyer was a draft pick that was traded to the Devils for really a no name.
Right.
I figured you would have went there, but I get Brodeur. I do. But
and it's more along the lines of, here is a team that wanted to go from 20 to 11 to take a player, and look who they could have had at number 20. So it's almost more the foresight and the trust that the Devils leadership had to say, you know what, we'll give you Trevor Kidd, we'll stand pat here, we'll take this French Canadian kid, we think he could be pretty good.
Almost
French
Canadian
goaltenders
by the Flames.
Yes, agreed.
19 other teams passed on him as well.
And as for I did come up with a worse trade. And it's not that it was a bad trade. It's just the taste that it leaves in your mouth. After they win the 95 Cup, they have this big fight with Claude Lemieux. He wanted to renegotiate his contract so bad, he even went as far to say that his contract was not valid because he signed a faxed copy of the contract and not the actual contract. And when that didn't fly, Lou was just like, you know what, I'm done with you. And he shipped him off to the island, and they got Steve Thomas in return. Now, Steve Thomas, not a bad player at all, but coming off of that 95 Cup, you wanted to kind of keep that team intact. And here he is, first chance he get, he's running out of town. You know, he wants to be renegotiate his deal, and he's run out of town.
Well, he's Conn Smythe Award winner, right?
Yeah.
Claude cried about that. I remember.
He was very proud.
Yeah, but I'm not. I don't feel too bad for him because he did go to the Avalanche to win another cup. So, not really upset about that.
I didn't follow it through to see what the Islanders got in exchange for him to send him out to Colorado.
I did a trade tree one time for I think the Kovalev trade, and it was very interesting. I got to find that. I think I still have
It was
it.
Wendell Clark.
They got Wendell Clark. Yeah, see, so the Avalanche won that trade, I would guess.
Well, I would say it was an easy win because
Go
Claude.
on to be one of the dirtiest players on their team out in Colorado.
Yeah, well,
he had that reputation already, so
That didn't happen though. I mean, what would we have had in that late '90s Red Wings Avalanche rivalry? I mean, just one of the nastiest rivalries in the history of the sport, and we would have missed out on a lot of that without Claude.
just going back to the TV contract, those games were always on ESPN. Anytime Detroit played Colorado, that was must-watch TV.
Yep.
Chris Draper's face would look a little different today if that never happened.
Too soon.
Too soon? My goodness gracious! It's been 20 years.
I think 25 years is the minimum when it comes to rearranging somebody's face.
That's going to do it for this week's episode. Thanks everybody for listening. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at @friends_rivals. Go to our YouTube channel. You can listen to it there, Friends and Rivals on YouTube.
Or you could check out the podcast wherever you get your podcast from.
Billy, sing us out.
Oh.